So I am way behind on my videos, way behind. I hope everyone had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We're already on well, it's the weekend again. But I had an amazing weekend off, a long weekend, and I was able to spend some time with family and friends. We had a cookout, and I did say that I was going to have one night of camping, but that didn't happen. I just got too busy. And I was hoping to. It had been the first night of camping of the summer season, whatever. It's really not summer yet, but it's starting to feel like it here. It's pretty warm. But I just didn't get to do that. But I did get out to the cemetery and pay respects to my family members that served our country, the true meaning of the holiday. And I also was able to get some flooring down in my. I said I was going to get my living room and my kitchen. That was the goal, to get the flooring done, the new flooring done in my living room and my kitchen. That was a project from way over a year ago, year and a half, I would say. I've had the new flooring, but I just haven't got to it yet. And so I was able to finish the living room, but I haven't got to the kitchen. I just ran out of energy. Um, after ripping up the carpet, and I'm telling you, it was a job, but it looks amazing. I've had the new flooring and stuff. I don't even know if I've already said that, for way over a year. And I'm hoping that by Sunday or Monday, I'll have the kitchen done too. But I just love the results. I mean, with the animals I have, I wanted the carpet gone out of my living room. And it was a job, let me tell you. I mean, being 53 years old, I mean, I did have help. I had somebody that knew what they were doing because I don't know what I'm doing. Uh, I mean, it's kind of easy to install. It's not that hard, but I still don't know what I'm doing. Um, but being older, I'm sorry, and it's not my forte. But I love it. I absolutely love it. It looks great. I can't wait to get it done in my kitchen. And then I have all the ceilings and the walls to paint. I've had the paint here. I just haven't had it done, or I haven't done it. And the backsplash for the kitchen, I've had that as well and haven't put it in, as well as the two bathrooms. So now it's motivated me to do that. I've also had a new dishwasher here to put in. Just haven't done that either. So, like I said, this has kind of motivated me to start doing this stuff. So, that was my Memorial Day weekend. Um, Kind of productive and a little bit of fun too. So, anyways, I'm just going to dig in on what this video is about. I said in my last video that there was something that I was holding off on talking about uh, when it comes to behaviors, that I wanted to eventually here. I wanted to go in a different direction with my channel. Um, Instead of talking about behaviors all the time. I mean, because we see it, right? We see it. I don't need to be calling things out all the time or talking about the behaviors in this drama circle. I wanted to take my channel in a different direction. I've been wanting to do that for a while. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop talking about things, but not as much. But there was a reason why I was holding off on talking about something and addressing it. And that was Noodle Mash. I was going to address a few things about her, or addressing to her, whatever, and talking about this legal issue with Mrs. Portland. I was kind of waiting to see how this was playing out, or how it was going to play out. But Mrs. Portland was arrested over Memorial Weekend, as we all know now. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now. The first thing that I'm going to do is just kind of address some things about Noodle Mash, or to Noodle Mash, or whatever. Now, the things that I'm going to address is, I heard or saw, whatever, a little while back, and then recently too. But with Noodle Mash, I saw where she stated she was disappointed in me. Okay. This was in a chat or whatever. I was brought up somehow. And she's disappointed in me. And then some of the people that used to be subbed to me, that are in her circle, I'll just say her circle, they said the same thing. You know, my mask has slipped. They're disappointed in me. And I'm just going to mention some of the things that I've seen. I am biased. I am a gossip girl. I'm judgmental, and some colorful things too that I'm just not going to say. Okay. So I'm going to kind of talk about that first. I'm going to address that first. Now, I think that I have said in the past that I have seen a change in Noodle Mash since she joined the Lycan Legion family. I've said that. And that's my opinion. Okay? I have seen a change. You can agree with me or not. I'm going to point out, or I'm going to talk about, you know, the changes I've seen. Okay? Now, the thing is, I don't know how I could be a disappointment, or how I have changed, or how my mask has slipped. Because from day one, I have done the same thing. I have talked about behaviors, right? All my videos are still up. None of them are private. They're not deleted. I have called out or talked about behaviors on many different people, or when something that I feel, you know, is worth talking about, I have talked about it. I've done, you know, cheesy, I call it my cheesy craft videos or cooking videos or whatever. Now, I haven't done those in a while, but I have done the same thing from day one. I do not body shame. I do not dox. I don't do any of the real life stuff, right? I don't do that. I don't participate in any of the, I would say, vile things that happen. If somebody is degrading, I call it degrading. If they are doing that on somebody, I don't participate in that. You will not see me do that. I don't say, you won't see me say, you know, that somebody is jealous because they didn't get somebody's D. Okay, you're not going to hear me say that. Or I should say, see me say that. Okay, you're just not. You're not going to see me do a lot of things that some other people do, right? It's just not going to happen. Now, I keep this channel pretty clean. I mean, yeah, I F-bomb in real life, and I don't on my channel, so I guess that could be saying I'm fake. But I try to do that for a reason. Not that I'm afraid that my channel is going to go down. I do it for a reason. I do a little bit of cussing on this channel, but I try not to F-bomb or I try to keep it pretty clean. Uh, Absolutely never, I don't think I bully anybody. I know Noodle Mash says she does the same. She doesn't bully, she doesn't body shame, she doesn't do this or do that. I believe she's very condescending, when she calls people sweethearts and this and that. I mean, when you do that and you don't like somebody, that's being very condescending. See, I won't do that. Um, when she, says some other things too, or participates when somebody is bullying somebody and you're participating in that bullying, I mean, I don't know. Now, some people can say that, I'm gossiping or whatever. Well, I've talked about that. That's part of my channel. It has been. So, yeah, I guess I'll give you that. Or saying that I'm being judgmental. Again, I'm talking about behaviors or maybe calling them out. I've done that from day one. So, I guess I can give you that as well. But here's the thing, when Noodle Mash came here and she was over in Natasha's community, that's when she was a sub to me, I was a sub to her, right? And some of the people in her circle were also, subs, I do believe, because, they were making comments. I do believe they were subs. They would come in and make comments under my channel, as well as Noodle Mash. And they would have no problem when I would call out or talk about, I should say, some behaviors with Natasha. Now, I stood up for Natasha as well and her family when things were done that I believe were wrong. Now, I have to say that there was things that I believe happened that were shady, that I talked about, that I was completely wrong about, okay, with Natasha. And I'm going to do a video and I'm going to correct myself because it's the right thing to do. It is. But anyways, when I talked about some things and called some things out on Natasha, Noodle Mash was fine with that, right? Because when I do my videos, I try to be respectful. I guess there could be you could say that I changed a little bit, maybe my tone. My tone might change when I get passionate about what I'm talking about, and when you get more comfortable as time goes on, even though I'm still just talking to myself. I haven't went live yet, so I'm just talking to myself. But when you get more comfortable and you're passionate, your tone does change. But she was fine when I would call some things out on Natasha, when I would call things out on Lycan, as well as other people, or talk about the behaviors and how I thought they were, I would say call them out. She was absolutely fine, and so were the people in her circle. They were fine with it until she joined the Lycan family. We'll just call it Lycan family. And they joined Lycan family, and then all of a sudden, they weren't fine with it anymore. Why was she okay with it when I called out some things with Natasha, right? Then that's when they were disappointed in me. My mask slipped. I was being biased. Now, I mean, that makes no sense. Now, saying that I'm biased, it does seem like I'm calling out, more things in one community, because in that community, it seems like they're the ones that are doing, as lately here, more of the gross behavior. So that's what I'm calling out. It doesn't mean that I'm triggered, because I'm sorry, nothing on YouTube triggers me, okay? Just because I'm calling out behaviors and stuff doesn't mean I'm triggered. I'm just calling it out. It's what I do. It's part of my channel. But if it's all in that community, there's a lot of creators now in that community. The community has grown, and there's a lot of things that's happening over there. So if they want to say I'm biased because of that, okay. And I also said a couple of months ago that it's kind of hard not to be biased when you have some people that are doing some pretty disgusting things over and over again, right? I mean, if you're not going to hang out with somebody in real life because of some of the things that they do, why would you want to surround yourself with those same people, or not same people, but those kind of people, like on YouTube or on social media, if that's not the type of people that you would have in your circle because of some of the things they say or do? I mean, common sense. And yes, it is hard to stay unbiased when some of the gross, nasty stuff, like I said, is done over and over again. Not just a slip up or a mistake here and there, because, we're only human. Some people are going to, make mistakes. But when they keep doing it and just keep doing it and keep doing it, I mean, come on. So I get that. I get it. And your opinion of me, I mean, that's your opinion. That's fine. Absolutely fine. You can have your opinion. I can have mine. Others can have theirs. But I did want to address that. Now I'm going to talk about, the reason why I said that, I seen a change. I've seen a change of many that have joined the Legion family when they went over there, because a lot of these people, before they went over there, they said, no way. Some of the things that Lycan would say or do, that their morals, quote morals, or what they stood for, the things that he would say and do, they would not have that around them, because they didn't stand for that. They stood against it. And that's why they didn't like him to begin with. But all of a sudden, they had nowhere to fit in or sit, so they went over there and they're okay with it now. So who really changed? Whose mask slipped? Right? Because all of a sudden, it's okay now, right? Even though some people might say, well, I'm not okay with everything. Would you hang out with people that said and did those things in real life? I mean, you got to think about that. You got to think about it. So we're going to move past that. I mean, that's basically what I got to say about, well, no, I got to add one more thing in there. I do remember that I enjoyed, because I was a sub to Noodle Mash, I enjoyed going over and watching her do her crafts. Okay. Now, I've said this many, many times that I do not catch a lot of lives. You don't see me in a lot of chats. Okay. You do once in a while, or I will dip in and then, I dip out. I don't stay for a long period of time. Or catch it all, stay for the whole live, because I just don't have the time. But I would still, when I could, if I would catch a live, I would go in there, and she would say, and this is when she was in Natasha's community, and this is one of the changes that I've seen in her. She would say, I know that there's some people that do not like Natasha in this, in my community or whatever, but I will not have you. You're welcome here. I want you here, but I will not have anybody bashing or disrespecting Natasha. She's my friend. And everybody respected that. There was, quite a few people that did not like Natasha. You seen the names and you knew. But they respected Noodle Mash, and they did not say anything about Natasha because they enjoyed watching her do her crafts. And I have to say that I loved watching her do her crafts. She is talented. Now, see, I don't backpedal. I'm not a follower. I know there's a lot of people that don't like Noodle Mash and they make fun of her jewelry, her crafts. Now, whether they're doing that because they don't like her or that's their opinion, whatever. But I like it. I think she's talented. I enjoyed watching her. And again, I'm not a follower. I don't backpedal on what I say. Okay? And I do my own different kinds of crafts. I mean, I haven't done a video in a long time. I work with cement. I do other types of crafts too. But I do like my fire bowls or, concrete, mushrooms and pumpkins and stuff like that, But I don't think I could do what she does. I never tried, but I don't know if I could. And I think she's very talented. But the thing is she did not mind having people in her chat or sub to her that did not like Natasha. Now, when she joined Lycan, Legion, family, whatever, I have not heard her say the same thing. I know that some of you might not like Lycan, but, I don't want you bashing him. He's my friend. I don't see anybody in there that isn't part of the Legion. I think you got to be a part of the Legion to fit in, or you're not welcome. Now, she might say, oh, no, that's not true, but I don't think anybody is in her circle or in her chat that isn't part of the Legion. There's a few people out there that just go wherever they want to go, and people are okay with them, because they don't listen, they don't listen to anybody. They're not followers, okay? They go where they want to go, period. But you don't hear the same thing like when she was with, Natasha. So that, and she is getting a lot more attention than when she was with Natasha. A lot more attention, a lot more support. Maybe financially, a lot more recognition because the Legion family grew with all these other channels popping up. A lot of people making new, deciding to make channels. But that's what the change that I seen. Okay, she sounds different. People change as they get more comfortable. I get that, but I just see a difference. That's just my opinion. So that's what I wanted to talk about when it's addressing her and what is said. I mean, about me changing and stuff. I'm sorry, I don't see a change in me. Okay, I haven't flipped and flopped or whatever. I go where I want to go. I chat where I want to chat. As long as they welcome me and as long as, everything is civil and cool and whatever, I will go and I will listen to everybody because I can't talk about behaviors if I don't, right? So I will go and listen. I'm not afraid to do that. Because you do hear some people say, I won't go listen to them. Well, you can't really get the facts or the truth if you don't. Now, granted, I don't listen to stuff all the way through. I don't have time for that. And I can't listen to everybody either. Don't have time for that either. But I'm going to move past that. I think I addressed that enough. We're going to talk about, the Mrs. P getting arrested and this whole thing and my opinion on it. Do I think Mrs. P should have been arrested? No, I don't. Do I think something should have been done? Yes. Now, does that make any sense? Well, no. But I'm going to explain that. In my opinion, yes, I do think something needed to be done, but I think that it should have been done. It should have been handled long before she got arrested. Okay? And this is why I was waiting to do this video. I wanted to see how long this was going to be drug out. Okay? With Noodle Mash. Because in my opinion, I think some of it was for content. It's just my opinion. All right? Content and maybe another fund going on. Now, I did say in my community post that because a lot of people were accusing Noodle Mash of doing this on purpose over the holiday weekend. I said that I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think she had that power to have Mrs. Portland arrested over this holiday weekend, right? And that's true. It didn't happen that way. Mrs. P called the police, I guess, on Noodle Mash, and either they showed up or they called or whatever. And I'm sure Mrs. Portland was calling them quite often on Noodle Mash. Now, that's harassment, even if there wasn't a stalking order. That's calling the police, taking away their resources, calling false reports. No one should have to put up with that. No one. Disability or not, okay? You shouldn't have to put up with that. So when they either showed up or came to Noodle Mash's, she's like, I have this stalking order and she's harassing me, and they ended up arresting her. So that's basically Mrs. Portland's fault, right? She got herself arrested. Now, she's broke this order over and over and over again. But I think this could have been handled in a different way before it got to this point. Right? And we're going to explain that. I'm going to explain that. Before she got arrested. And I'm sure she was scared to death. I know I've never been arrested. I would have been scared to death to even spend one night in jail. Or even to be arrested. Let alone, what, three days, 3 nights or whatever that she had to go to jail. I don't think Mrs. P's ever been arrested before. She does have disabilities, clearly. It's like, and I'm not trying to sound mean, it would be like putting a mentally challenged, disabled, and physically disabled child in jail. Not just a child, but a disabled child in jail. Could you imagine? Now, why do I say this could have been handled before it got to this point? Because why did Noodle Mash wait? Why did she wait? She was waiting for this legal fund to be filled, okay? To get this attorney. But this harassment and this order has been broke long ago. Long ago. Now, she said she was waiting she wasn't going to go to court without an attorney. I guess that's her prerogative. She could do that. But in the meantime, Mrs. Portland is still spiraling out of control, right? Noodle Mash keeps making video after video, community post after community post to debunk lies, to defend herself. What is that doing? That's poking Mrs. P to make her make videos and community post and we all know Mrs. Portland lies. She has lied about every one of us. She's lied about me. I mean, mine was just a fraction compared to what she's done to other people, right? Now, I know Noodle Mash said that Mrs. Portland hasn't done anything to, even close to anybody else, especially with them having their address. Yeah, she did. Natasha. She absolutely did for a very long time. Went after her big time. And now I know Natasha clapped back hard when she went at, back at Mrs. P. She would wait for a while until Mrs. P, really got ugly, and then she would clap back at her. But Mrs. P went after Natasha's family and her niece. We remember that video she did on her minor niece, right? I'm not going to say what video it was. It was a racist video. And she had Natasha's address. She went after almost every creator. Some people want to say that, Natasha did this and did that in the beginning with Mrs. P. That's not true. She didn't do squat to her to begin with. Mrs. P lied, and other people in the community, they knew it. We seen it go down, but they hated Natasha enough that they brought Mrs. P into their community, in my opinion, to get back at Natasha. And then what did Mrs. P do in every community, right? The same thing. And it was recycled. Now, some creators said once she screwed up, nope, you're not ever coming back. And they shunned her. And they kept it that way. Other creators kept letting her back in. I said from day one, I've said it multiple times, this community was not healthy for Mrs. P. This was not the place for her. She could not handle this place. She doesn't know what clapback is, okay? She doesn't know this isn't the place for her. It wasn't healthy. But people kept wanting her to be here. Some people, I believe, genuinely care about her. And other people, I believe, wanted to weaponize her against other people. And some people just wanted to make fun of her. It was great content for their channels. They loved to stir her up just to watch her melt, and then they can make fun of it, okay? But anyways, and you have to bear with me. I don't have any of this wrote down. I'm just going off the seat of my pants like I normally do. But Mrs. P and I did lose my train of thought. She did spiral so many times. We have seen it. But, and I will put it on, I am going to put it on pause just to gather my thoughts here. Okay. So I haven't gathered my thoughts. So, but I think I was, saying that, she basically, Mrs. P has attacked everybody in this drama circle and went after and lied. She has lied about many things, about people, told lies on them, not just Noodle Mash, but many people. I did videos on Mrs. P. I stopped doing, calling out behaviors. I quit doing those a long time ago because it was like fueling the fire with her. And not only that, but then when it was read out that her disabilities were even, she had more than what I realized. It's not a fair fight, okay? It's not. She, in my opinion, has impulse controls. Can she control some things? Absolutely. We've seen that. But I do believe she has issues controlling some other things, and she just doesn't understand things. That's clear. She does not understand what uh, hate attacks are. She thinks everybody's hate attacking her. She doesn't understand the clapback. She thinks clapback is something totally different. But anyways, like I think I was talking about, you know, letting this drag on. Noodle Mash let it drag on for so long because she wanted a fund to get an attorney. Like I said, that's her choice. But in the meantime, Mrs. P kept going and going and going. And I think where I was at with this is Noodle Mash kept putting out videos to debunk what Mrs. P was saying or doing, and that was just triggering her. And Noodle Mash knows this. She would even say, I know this is going to cause more community posts, more videos, but, you know, I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, that's her choice too. It's her channel. But she knew what it was going to do. Not only that, but people in her circle were also making video after video after video calling out Mrs. P. And Mrs. P was saying some stuff about them too. But some of the people were just making videos or they were doing lives and talking about Mrs. P, right? Some people in that community would make fun of Mrs. P, and that would trigger Mrs. P. They've made memes about Mrs. P, and they know Mrs. P is addicted to YouTube because some were saying, well, what, you know, she could just log off. Well, some of you all can't log off, and some of you all talk about the same thing over and over again, and you don't have the type of disabilities Mrs. P has, and you're on here 24/7, except you know, maybe a little bit of sleep in between, but you're going around looking at everything, right, to see if anything's said about you. Can you imagine Mrs. P? Mrs. P already put out that, you know, YouTube is basically her life. She's honest about it. That, you know, she wakes up and she's on here. This is her thing. But Noodle Mash was just waiting and waiting. And here's the thing. She didn't need an attorney to begin with to get an order. Now, I'm shocked that it was a stalking order because Mrs. Portland's on a mobility scooter. They live, what, almost 2 hours away from each other? And she's disabled. So how could she stalk her? And this is a public platform. Maybe it's different because it being on the internet, because this was all done on the internet, right? Every bit of it. And maybe the laws are different in Oregon, and maybe that's how it had to be. You know, they have different, you know, protective order, restraining order. It just depends if it's domestic or, you know, somebody that you're not related to or stalking. Is it because Mrs. P was going around and looking at her, you know, watching every video that Noodle Mash was doing and then, you know, making a video? Well, Noodle Mash was doing the same. She might say, nope, I wasn't. People were sending me things. Well, you can say that all you want. How do they know if that's true or not? Because Noodle Mash was responding to everything Mrs. Portland was doing, and they even followed Mrs. Portland over to another community, right? And not only that, but I couldn't even find Mrs. Portland for a while there because she keeps changing her name. I couldn't find her. I tried looking her up to see what she was up to. I was curious, I'm not going to lie, because they kept posting this stuff saying, no, I'm debunking this didn't happen, I didn't say this. And I'm like, oh, well, what is Mrs. Portland? What is she up to? What is she saying? I couldn't even find her. But they can find her because they were following her, okay? Or they sub to her. They sub to her or whatever. I mean, I didn't sub to her. So it was back and forth. But back to, you know, I guess that's what, was ordered, was a stalking order. And I did say, again, I don't backpedal. I did say that I did a video standing up for Noodle Mash. And I stand behind that. That she had every right to do something. I even said that Natasha had every right to do something about Mrs. Portland, even if it's legal, to put a stop to this nonsense. You don't deserve to be harassed, even if someone is disabled, right? You don't. And if it takes going legal to make it stop, then so be it. And I stand behind that. I still do. And that's what Noodle Mash did. Again, you don't need an attorney. But if you feel like that you don't want to walk into the courtroom without one, I mean, again, that's okay. But she raised funds. She had to raise funds to get an attorney. Everybody else paid for it, to get an attorney to get this stalking order. And then we all know she played that song after she got the stalking order. She played that song, Sammy Hagar, Winner Takes It All. Love that song. Love Sammy Hagar. And some people were upset about that. Now, she said, well, it's just because of everything I went through and I like the song. I mean, okay. So, but some people took it that she was, taking a jab at Mrs. P of, she's the winner and, and it was a bad thing. People have their own opinions about that. But ever since, Noodle Mash has done nothing but talk about Mrs. P in this situation. Now, I'm sorry, but that's been basically her content since she came here, is Mrs. P. She's done some other things, but her channel has been a lot about Mrs. P. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but especially after the stalking order. Now, and she's made it clear, too, that she's allowed to talk about Mrs. P. And she's like, well, Mrs. P's allowed to talk about me, too. But she's not allowed to tell lies about me. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And she's not allowed to address Noodle Mash. That's breaking the order, which we'll address that, too. But she's made it a point to say, but if I wanted to contact Mrs. P, I could. This order doesn't work both ways. Now, it should, in my opinion, it should. I'm going to hold off on that in a minute. Or I'll say something about that in a minute. The thing is, the order was done. Okay. And I'm saying it was a good thing, no matter, if funds were raised or whatever. Some people were mad about it. I thought it was a good thing because, hey, Mrs. P for a little bit did not say anything about, I think she was a little bit scared. She was maybe a little bit mad. She thought she was being silenced. Little did she know that, yes, she could talk about it. There was just certain things she couldn't do. But on the other side, they were basically making it sound like she wasn't allowed to talk about it. They were making it, and I seen the comments. People don't, they're talking about the third party contact. Some people need to know what a third party contact is. I've been through this, okay? They were making it seem like if other people were talking about this, or if they were going at Noodle Mash, that Mrs. Portland would get in trouble because it would be third party harassment. I'm sorry, this is a drama circle. If people didn't like Noodle Mash, it didn't necessarily mean that it was because of Mrs. Portland. Some people just don't like Noodle Mash. Like some people don't like me. Some people don't like Natasha. Some people don't like Granny. Some people don't like Lycan. Some people don't like Robbie. It's just how it is, right? But the thing is they kept saying, if this person says this to Noodle Mash, Mrs. Portland's going to get in trouble. They kept threatening that over and over in Noodle's community. Okay? Noodle might not have been doing it, but her community was doing it. Now, we're going to talk about real quick here the first time that Mrs. Portland broke this order. This is very important. And I think this is something that the judge should know, and Mrs. Portland's attorney. They should know this. Mrs. Portland had a falling out in the community before this. Lycan put his foot down. Something happened, I'm not going to go over it. I gave him kudos for it. He wasn't okay with what Mrs. Portland said and did and kicked her from the community, okay? I mentioned it, said something about it. See, people say that I'm only targeting, my mask slipped. I'm biased, I'm sorry. But I mentioned it and I said, good for him. He stood up for what was right. But anyways, after this order was done and the community raised money to help Noodle Mash get this order, Lycan let her back in the community, and so did the community, right? Their friend who's scared for her life. Now, I never seen the video, the hearing or whatever it was, or heard it. It's none of my business. I don't want to. I think all stalking orders or protective orders or whatever, those should all be sealed. That's my opinion. But anyways, they allowed her back in the community. I think that's important that the judge and Mrs. P's attorney should know, because Noodle Mash was okay with that. Now, she might say, no, I wasn't. Well, if you weren't, you would have left the community. What's more important? Your safety, your mental health, your well-being, your safety of your family? Because, I don't know, I wouldn't want my stalker around me at all. Yikes. And this all happened on the net, right? On this platform, on social media. None of it happened in, your real life, like around your home, around a workplace, any type of like that. It all happened here. But yet they allowed her back into the community. Now, I remember Noodle Mash saying, well, we got each other blocked. And if she is in chat or whatever, I can't ask her to leave. That wouldn't be fair. I just won't come into chat. And vice versa. There's an understanding. If I'm there, Mrs. P will leave. Really? Mrs. P was always there. So how fair is that, when Noodle Mash is the person that is a part of that community. She's the member. I don't know if she was a paying member at the time or whatever, but she's a big part of that community, and you allow her stalker, right? She's the victim. You allow her stalker in the community. For one, y'all want to talk about loyalty, right? Loyalty. What kind of friends do you have? You want to throw that loyalty out there. What kind of friends would allow your stalker into the community to where you can't chat? You're telling a judge that you fear for your life, right? And you need a stalking order. But you got your stalker in the community chatting. Yeah, that makes a lot of damn sense, doesn't it? So we see them both in there chatting. Now, like I said, they say they had each other blocked because, Mrs. P ain't going to stay out and Noodle Mash ain't going to stay out. So they're both in there. Now, they weren't talking to each other, I don't think, but they were both in there at the same time. And then you have Mrs. Portland up on panel, and the first time she broke this order, was on panel in the community addressing Noodle Mash. That's the first time she broke it. You are not allowed, especially since this is all done on social media, to address someone directly. And she did. She addressed Noodle Mash, and she said, not word for word, that she was sorry this all happened and apologized to Noodle Mash, and Noodle Mash gave her hearts. Right? That's the first time Mrs. P broke that order. I think that's important for the judge and the attorney to know, because in my opinion, that made Mrs. P feel comfortable enough, because nothing was said, nothing was done. It was allowed. Noodle Mash allowed it. The community allowed it, because Noodle Mash didn't say anything. She didn't say anything when that happened. She didn't say anything when she was allowed back in. Like I said, she could say, well, I can't help who they allow back in. Well, a judge could have said, well, you know what? You should have left the community then. What's more important? Did you just waste our time? Stalking orders are pretty serious. You know, we don't want to just hand them out to anybody. Right? So again, in my opinion, Mrs. Portland felt comfortable enough that, hey, I was allowed to do it. And then she kept going ever since, right? She kept going ever since then. Now, I do believe there was a truce done between the two. It was broke by Mrs. P. And then it went downhill since. And then here we are, right? So it's been nonstop, back and forth with these two women making videos, community posts, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Mrs. P getting very vile, very ugly, and Noodle Mash defending herself, her lies, and Mrs. P breaking the order over and over and over again. So Noodle Mash, someone starts a fund, another fund, to take Mrs. P back to court for breaking the order. Now, again, she does not need an attorney to take Mrs. P back to court for breaking an order. That's why I'm like, why let it drag on for so long? Because she had all the evidence that she needed, that she broke this order. She didn't need an attorney. But Noodle Mash said she did not want to walk into court without an attorney. Now, remember that. She did not want to walk into court without an attorney. Okay. So she had a fund for $4,000. That's quite a bit to raise, right? She raised over $2,000. But in the meantime, Mrs. P is just going and going and going and calling the police. And just video after video after video. Community posts, Noodle Mash, debunking lies, other people poking. And I do believe that Mrs. P was sent things. I do believe that people called her. I do believe that she was sent emails by other people. I'm not saying Noodle Mash, okay? Just to make that clear. But I do believe other people that supports Noodle Mash did do some of these things. I also believe Mrs. P did some herself maybe. But no doubt, I do believe that others sent her emails and made phone calls and sent her crap, literally, okay? And again, others making videos to trigger her because they wanted to see her spiral. They loved it for content. And some people wanted to see Mrs. P get into trouble. They wanted to see this all happening. This is the drama circle. Drama sells. They wanted to see this unfold. I'm not saying Noodle Mash, by the way, for the people in the back. Okay? So we're going to wait. We're going to go through this mental anguish. We're going to go through this headache, sleepless nights and tears, like Noodle Mash said was happening. And we're going to wait to try to fill up this legal fund before we do anything about it. Now, she said she was, sending, evidence to the police, gathering evidence or whatever. Now, I'm going to say this. I had a stalking order against my ex in the state I lived in at the time. Now, I did not get an attorney when I got that order. I was in fear for my life, okay? I had medical records. I had pictures. I just went and got the order. Gave them my evidence. Here you go. I didn't want to use... I mean, I wasn't going to ask people to pay for it, for one thing. I thought I had plenty of evidence. And I wasn't going to use my hard-earned money that I worked for. I had kids. I didn't need it. I just gave the stuff to that. Look, here. This man is stalking me, literally. Following me around. And when he broke it, I got the stalking order. When he broke it the first time, he came to my work, okay? And he had a gun on him. And no, he did not point it at me. He didn't threaten me with the gun. But in the state that I was living in, and in the state that I live in now, anytime you get any type of order against someone, you are not allowed to own a weapon. I don't know how it is in Oregon, but they check that box that you are not allowed, as long as you have that order against you, you are not allowed to own a weapon. So when he broke that order, again, I didn't even think about, I need an attorney, because I didn't need one. I had witnesses at my job that he was there, okay? So we went to court. I had my witnesses, stating that he was there, that he broke that order. And he didn't go to jail. He got warned. And the second time, he did go to jail. But he was following me everywhere. I did not get any attorney. Now, again, it's up to Noodle Mash if she felt that she absolutely had to have an attorney. And that, she couldn't afford one, so I'm going to have the community, pay for this attorney. If that's what they wanted to do, that's what they wanted to do. But in my opinion, what that caused was time for Mrs. P to keep spiraling and time for other people to keep making videos and community posts to keep poking at her and make her spiral. And then what it caused was an arrest instead of going to court, because I do believe something needed to be done. I made a community post not too long ago saying that Noodle Mash had every right to do something, because Mrs. P broke that, do something legally to make it stop. Right? Now, what I thought would make it stop is if Mrs. P had to go to court for breaking that order, that she would be scared. And some people might say, no, that wouldn't happen. But let's remember, when she went to court, or when the stalking order got put into place, Mrs. P was in the comfort of her own home. It was a Zoom call, right? She didn't have to come up with any money to get to court. She didn't have an attorney to sit down with her and say, no, ma'am, you can't be doing this. She didn't have to look at a judge in the eyes, right? It was all on Zoom. And I think they had issues with the video call, they said, or whatever. Not sure, wasn't there, didn't see it. But she didn't have to walk into that courtroom and, be scared. And again, she didn't have an attorney to sit down and tell her, if you don't do A, B, and C, you're going to go to jail. And I'm not a YouTube attorney. I'm a real attorney. I went to school for this. Okay? I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not hate attacking you. I'm telling you the truth. If you don't do this, you're going to go to jail. No ifs, ands, or buts, Missy. Okay? And at that time, when she broke it, they might have told her, with her bond now, she can't be on the internet. They might have told her, you get no internet. And that might have scared her straight. Now, a lot of people don't think she'll stay off the internet with this bond. I think it will. I think those days in jail might scare her enough. But I don't think, like I said, I think this went too far. Now, with this fund, this makes absolutely no sense. Because now Noodle Mash isn't going to use the funds that she raised for an attorney. She stopped the fund. Okay? Don't you still got to go to court? I mean, Mrs. P's got court on the 20th, right? And Noodle Mash has to go and testify. She's got to be there too. She said she won't go to court without an attorney. That's why she was, waiting. That's why she was raising that money. Because she won't go to court. She doesn't want to go to court without an attorney. But they put a hold on it because Mrs. P was arrested. But she still got to go to court. And she's like, if anybody wants, we're stopping the fund. I think I've already said it was over $2,000 that they raised. If anybody wants their money back, they can get it. But you got until June 5th. Right? That's a couple days away. A few days away. 3, whatever. Here's the thing. She knows. I think she said a couple of people asked for their money back. But most people, when they donate money and they're in a community and they're friends with you, most people are not going to ask for their money back. Okay? Even if it's not going to be used for, if something changes and it's not going to be used for what it was, the intended purpose was, they're not going to ask for their money back. They already sent you the money. It is what it is. The right thing to do would have been just to refund everybody's money and not even ask. But, Noodle Mash already addressed that. And she said, well, the reason why I didn't do that is because when I said I was going to be sending people money back, I've already had about 20 people that I would be refunding. I already had about 20 people send me a message and say, if you're going to do that, we're just going to send it right back to you in a Cash App. But my question is you're still going to court, right? So you don't need an attorney now? You feel comfortable? I mean, but she could come back and say, well, court's already June 20th, and I'm not going to be able to, I don't think I'll be able to raise, maybe that's going to be the excuse. I'm not going to be able to raise the other $2,000 by June 20th because that's not that far away for the retainer it's going to take. I mean, that's what my guess is, my opinion. But you really didn't need to raise that kind of, money anyways. Another thing that the judge could know about, that this could have been handled. You really didn't, I guess it's no big deal. The judge might not even care because Noodle Mash, she can raise money if she wants to. It's her choice, and people can pay it if they want to. It's their choice. You can do whatever you want with the money or with their money. It's their money to do what they want with it. But the money is not going to be used for what it was intended to be used for. It's free money now for Noodle Mash, right? Money off of Mrs. P's back, in my opinion. For, Mrs. P went to jail. So it was money off her back. That's just my opinion. She's still got to go to court. So she's comfortable enough now to go to court without an attorney? I don't know. That's a pretty sweet deal, right? That should be enough to get the vehicle now. You got money before, and you got this, over $2,000. Shoot. Now, she also said if you didn't donate, it's really none of your business. Well, A lot of y'all have been screaming about Natasha's or everybody else's donations. Noodle might say, I haven't. But, your whole community has been calling other people grifters. Natasha, I didn't even think about this. With Natasha's legal fund, she never put a date on when she was going to use it. She never did. She never said that it was going to specifically be used for this certain thing. She kind of said what it was, what she was looking at, but she didn't say for sure exactly what it was going to be used for, like Noodle Mash did, or like what some other people have said, they were going to do. She didn't put a timeline on it either. Right? But a lot of people in that community are calling other people out as scammers, grifters, whatever, because they might not have used a fund yet for a certain thing when they haven't put a date on it, or a time that they're going to do something. I don't know. I mean, would a judge be interested to know that this has went on? It was allowed to go on. It wasn't, nothing was done about it because funds were being raised for an attorney that really an attorney wasn't needed because the order was broke over and over and over again. I don't know if people are sending in clips or videos or whatever. I mean, that's their choice, I guess, if they do or not. But anyways, we're gonna move past that. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk about when Noodle Mash first came to this community. Mrs. P was already here. Now, Noodle Mash can say, well, I had my channel before. She showed that over and over. I don't know what proof that is. Okay? You weren't here, Noodle Mash. You came here knowing Mrs. P was here because someone told you that she was causing havoc in this community, right? That's why you came here, because you didn't know about this community, right? Until someone told you Mrs. P was here. So that's why you came here. And I find it hard to believe that you were great friends with Mrs. P when you came, because that's not how your videos sound. Your first couple of videos and the story that you told. Now, don't quote me. It might not be great friends because, she likes to do the videos of debunking lies or I didn't say that or whatever. And I don't have things wrote in front of, wrote down. I go by the seat of my pants. And I don't have anything in my computer or my phone. I don't save squat from YouTube, okay? I don't go do video clips or any of that nonsense. Just don't, never will. That's not me. Don't care. Don't care enough about this drama circle to do any of that shit. Sorry. But anyways, she came here knowing Mrs. P was here. And when she said she was going to talk about somebody, she had somebody in mind. I don't for a minute believe that she was talking about Natasha. I didn't from day one. I thought it was Mrs. P she was going to talk about. And sure enough, it was. Like her next video, right? She's telling, basically, Mrs. P what to do. Now, she knows Mrs. P better than anybody. She knew her back in high school and when she lived by her. And I'm sure she knows that Mrs. P does not like to be told what to do. She takes that as a hate attack, which it's not. It's just giving her advice, but that's not how Mrs. P takes things. We all know that. We know that. And I think Noodle Mash gave the story on, with the apartment, when they lived in the apartment complex. Now, I'm going to, that they had issues. And when Mrs. P moved out, that they were on okay terms, right? they weren't enemies, they weren't fighting, but they were on okay terms. And I don't believe that they talked again until here in the community. So I believe that, in my opinion, they were on okay terms when Noodle Mash came here. Okay? And this is just my opinion again, that Noodle Mash came here and Mrs. P was a hot topic, and Noodle Mash wanted to grow a channel and, seen an opportunity, and no shame in that. And when she joined Natasha's community, that was a slap in the face to Mrs. P. Now, I'm not saying Noodle Mash did that on purpose, but she, in my opinion, knew that was going to trigger Mrs. P. Because Mrs. P, again, in my opinion, was obsessed with Natasha. It was a love-hate obsession. She was dressing like her, wearing the headbands. She was trying to talk like her. She was, ordering the makeup that Natasha was wearing. She was the happiest, and, in Natasha's community, wanted to be in there. And when she was kicked out again, and then here you have somebody that you've known in high school and you lived by, and you did have some issues with when you lived by her, being allowed in the community that you still wanted to be a part of and kept getting kicked out of, or got kicked out of again. I don't even know how many times it was. It's like you kind of knew what would, not saying you did that on purpose and that was your goal. But anyways, we know that Noodle Mash has put out that, this is my proof. This is what we're going to talk about. Was Noodle Mash a bully back in high school? She wants to debunk everything, okay? Because, this is kind of, with the stalking order, Mrs. Portland is not allowed to, to tell these lies and yada, yada, yada. And she doxed Noodle Mash. And yeah, she put out that apartment complex and this and that. And I said to begin with, but, I had to step back and look at all this later on. I had to look at the whole picture. Especially after the whole diagnosis of Mrs. Portland that was read out with her permission, right? Noodle Mash said, it's absolute proof because of some of the Facebook messages of Mrs. Portland. And I even said yes, I agreed with it. Because, that she was not a bully back in high school. Because any normal person, right, if they were bullied by somebody, even if it was years ago, might say something in a message, right? Like, you were my bully. They might say something. They might not be so welcoming like we see Mrs. Portland being to Noodle Mash. Now, in my heart, I'm going to say that I don't believe Noodle Mash bullied her in high school. Now, does Mrs. P, does she believe Noodle Mash did? Maybe. Maybe that's what she remembers, or maybe that's her truth. I don't know. I'm not in Mrs. Portland's brain. She's sticking with that story, but I'm one that did see the video of Mrs. Portland where she said, when she introduced her husband to Noodle Mash, she said, this is one of the few that didn't bully me, but we're going to explain something here that maybe a lot of people will understand, something a little bit different that can debunk a little bit of Noodle Mash's evidence that she wasn't a bully and they got along great in the apartment complex, or that she wasn't a bully at all. Now, we do know that Noodle Mash did say that, again, not word for word, I don't have it in front of me, that she wasn't so nice or she was mean back in the day. She was a different person. Not sure how she worded that. Was that back in high school? Was that back in her 20s, back in her 30s? Was that back when she lived in the apartment complex? I don't know. I don't remember. I don't even know if she put that out. But I do know she said something about that, and that she's changed her ways or whatever, however she worded that. But we've seen those messages, right, where Noodle Mash showed on Facebook where Mrs. Portland is like, they're talking about, oh, it's a small world, went to high school with you. Oh, I want to get the yearbook pictures out and look at it. Oh, yeah, So, a normal person, if someone was bullied, they'd be like, oh my gosh, they would remember that. And, God, you bullied me in high school. They might, say, hey, it's been years ago, but they would remember, yeah, I remember you were kind of a badass, or you were mean, or might have mentioned something like that, right? And that's not how Mrs. P portrayed that when you see those messages. So that's Noodle Mash's proof that she did not bully Mrs. P. But we have to remember something, right? We got to remember something. And this is important. How many times has there been a creator or, even a sub that has been extremely nice to Mrs. P, never bullied her, was never mean to her, sent her, gifts, done really nice things, and then, they kind of backed away from her for whatever reason, and then Mrs. P turned on them, and would say that they hate attacked her, manipulated her, used her, bullied her, yada yada, when it's never happened, right? And then she turns around and she makes up with them behind the scenes or whatever, phone call, whatever. And then all of a sudden, she wants back in their good graces. And she says, they never bullied me. They never manipulated me. They've never attacked me. They never did this. They never did that. She changes her story, right? And then there might be another little falling out or whatever. And then she changes it back again. They've always used me. They manipulated me. They bullied me. Yada, yada, yada. So we've seen the reverse of that too. We have seen people that have been very mean to Mrs. Portland. And it could have been because Mrs. Portland has been vile to them, okay? And they're clapping back hard at her. But they have made memes about her. They have made fun of her. They have body shamed her. They have made videos about her. They have been very ugly towards her. And she will say they're her friends, that they have been nice to her, that they love her, and that they have never manipulated her, and that they are good to her, right? When we have seen with our own eyes what they have literally done to her. But she wants to be in there. She wants to sit with them. She wants them as her friend. She wants them in, she's so desperate for that friendship that she is, saying that they've never done these things to her, and we have seen it. So that's what I'm saying. That's kind of important to know when we are talking about these messages that Noodle Mash is showing. Right? Now, again, I'm not saying Noodle Mash ever bullied her, because in my heart, I don't think she did. What I'm saying is that is not really, really proof. Because we have seen how Mrs. Portland thinks, how her mind is when it comes to people being friends or hate attacking, or they're not hate attacking. It's like she doesn't know the difference. If that makes any sense. I think the only truth that anybody would ever get is if people from their high school actually came forward and say, this is what really happened. I don't think that would ever happen, but I'm just saying. Again, in my heart, I don't think so. Now, we also know that Mrs. Portland, she lied about how long Noodle Mash, lived in the apartment complex, how long they lived by each other. She lied about Noodle Mash living right next door, basically in the same building. Mrs. Portland lies about a lot of things, or maybe she believes her lies. We don't know. She does lie a lot. But the thing is, Noodle Mash has to try to debunk every lie. And I get it. When you got someone lying about you, you want to debunk that shit, right? But the thing is, Noodle Mash literally doxed her own place. She did. Now, Mrs. Portland did put out the apartment complex, but in her mind, we got to understand, the disabilities. In her mind, she's putting out, this is where I used to live. Now, I don't know. We know that Noodle Mash said she used to live there and she moved away. Now, did Mrs. Portland, when she did the doxing, was she still under the impression that Noodle Mash didn't live there anymore? I think that's important to know. Especially when it comes to the judge in this whole case. Because Noodle Mash said she didn't live there anymore. So was Mrs. Portland saying, this is where Noodle Mash lives? When she was still under the impression, when we all were, when Noodle Mash said she didn't live there anymore? Because then she came out with the truth. I would have stuck with the lie that, I moved away. But then she's like, no, I still live there. Why would you... I would have... Everybody would have understood if you would have still stuck with the lie. Because Mrs. Portland did put out the apartment, the sign. And she said, this is where I lived with Noodle Mash. And I do believe she even said, someone can quote me if I'm wrong, that this is where Noodle Mash lives. Now, she didn't show the building where Noodle Mash lived. She just, showed the apartment and the apartment sign. But was Mrs. P was she under the impression that Noodle Mash didn't live there anymore? Because Noodle Mash said she moved away, that she didn't live there anymore. And then she said later on that, she told that lie because Mrs. Portland put out that apartment building sign. I mean, that kind of would be important for a judge to know, I would think. But Noodle Mash wanted to debunk the lie that Mrs. Portland said they lived right next to each other, shared the same wall. So she goes driving and shows the building that she lives in. Now, she doesn't go right up to the building, but she shows the road and shows, see, I lived in that building. This is when she was still saying that she didn't live there anymore. But she actually does. Why would you do that? You don't need to debunk everything. Everybody out here knows that Mrs. Portland lies. It's not that important. You got to understand, some people that support Mrs. Portland and that don't like you, they're just not going to like you. It doesn't matter what you say. Okay? They know that she's lying about a lot of things. But they're not going to like you. The people that like you and they support you, they're going to believe whatever you say, Noodle Mash. Even if you lie to them, they're going to believe you. Okay? Not saying you're going to lie to them. I'm just saying, you could lie to them right to their face and they support you and they're going to believe you. So you don't have to keep debunking everything and putting your own self in danger because you did dox your own place. Noodle Mash, or Mrs. Portland, I was right. She has said and done some vile things. Absolutely. But Noodle Mash, you have been putting out these videos over and over again, knowing that it was going to provoke her. You have. And again, it's your choice to do that. But I do believe that this could have been handled differently. And it could have been nipped in the bud a long ass time ago. It didn't have to keep going this long and this far. And was it done a lot for content? And you might say, no, who would want to go through all this mental anguish? Well, you know, you've raised quite a bit of money, or you made quite a bit of money, in my opinion, off of Mrs. P. Because a lot of your content is about Mrs. P. I mean, it is. And that's not me trying to be mean. Just like, I mean, it's wrong what Mrs. P did. That there's no doubt about that. It's wrong. And nobody should be harassed. Kind of like, you know, what Mandy did. I mean, Kim condoned all that. I mean, she's in your guys' community, right? That was a big old lie. The reason why Mandy did that is because Granny passed her address behind the scenes. So Mandy really doxed. I mean, literally doxed Granny. And I did hear you say that was wrong to do. But see, Kim, you know, she condoned it. And in my opinion, was in Mandy's ear. Because see, Mandy and Granny were friends. And then out of the blue, she did that to her. And then, you know, Kim conveniently had her on panel. I don't even think they were friends. Had her on panel and was, you know, they were talking about going to Granny's house. And Mandy has a very horrible criminal past of doing some horrible stuff, right? And she was also spiraling. People were seeing that. But that was all swept under the rug. I don't know if the truth ever came out. I mean, we heard what Mandy said when asked for proof that happened, because everybody wants proof, right? And what did she say? Well, I don't want to dox myself, you know, or myself again. Stuff could have been redacted, right? And then she said, well, I handed it over to the proper authorities. Well, how long ago was that? And then she disappeared. I know, don't say her name 3 times. She disappeared. But I think somebody, I don't like hearsay, I think somebody said she might have told the truth, that it didn't happen. But she left that on her community post for a couple of days. That was a legit dox. And Granny did show her receipt when she stayed at the motel. People want to say differently. I seen it. It was on her video. She showed it. But, you know, some people are okay in that community that happened. They condoned it. And you might say, well, why are you bringing this up? Why are you bringing it up? Because I'm bringing it up because some people are just okay with certain things and not with others, right? I mean, you kind of need to look at some people that you associate with on these matters, or that you call friends. You can't be okay with certain things happening to other people. Yes, I know you said something about it, but you still sit with some people that condone it and make excuses for it. But, you know, hey, that's your business. But I do believe this could have all been nipped in the bud before an arrest happened. And I do believe that she was provoked a lot. She's a little bit different. It's not a fair fight. It's not. It's not, you know, she has different disabilities than the rest of us. It's still no excuse for the harassment. Nobody deserves to be harassed. And I do believe something needed to be done. That's what I'm going to say about it. The other thing that I am going to say is that she does not need to be coddled. Okay? Mrs. P does not need to ever come back to this community. That's my opinion. She cannot handle this community. I've said it before, I think, in this video, there's some people, in my opinion, that they should have their, well, I said it on a community post, they should have their internet taken away. Because they're not adult enough to clap back correctly. They're putting some nasty stuff out there. But people should not welcome her in this community. And maybe that will be a stipulation, as she's not allowed on the net. You know, even after this is said and done. And I don't think that people need to keep making videos about her. Maybe they should take the videos down. But, you know, I guess if it's a quick buck, I mean, I should be taking videos down. Well, mine are way back. But I'm talking about the new videos that keep going up about her. Why? She's not even on, you know, on YouTube right now. She might be watching. I don't know. But if she is watching, she shouldn't be. But if she is, are you trying to trigger her to do something she's not supposed to be doing? Who knows? I'm going to end it on that. All right. Like I said, something should have happened, and I think she should have went to court. And she has an attorney now. So hopefully, things will be done different now that she has an attorney. And this will put a complete stop to it on all sides. Both sides. And maybe some other people will stop with their videos and stop using Mrs. P. In my opinion, she is being used all the way around. And I do not believe that she should ever be welcomed, if she's allowed on the internet, into this community ever again. She can't handle it. It's not safe for her. And she'll end up in jail again. Okay? She will. So everyone, have a wonderful weekend again. And we will talk to you the next time.